a short update, please. So, okay, short notice, please be seated. After this presentation, we do a short closing keynote where there is some information. And now we're going to the last presentation of today. We're really happy to have Javier here. He will tell us about this beautiful, really usable, a topic we already heard a bit during presentations. So we're good that we have one presentation deeply about only this topic. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And welcome to this little talk. My name is Javier Vargas. I work for Google here in Zurich. I'm a UX researcher, so I'm in charge of studying how users use modern technologies. And I'm going to talk to you today about a very interesting topic, that is, how do the factors usability and aesthetics, the beauty of a website, interact, and what can we do with them? So I would like to start with a very old saying, which I'm sure all of you know, an old Greek saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like always with these kind of old, ancient wisdoms, there's a lot of truth in that. So what does it say? If you look at something, you might like it or you might not like it, and it's nothing objective, right? So maybe you look at the latest, newest Volkswagen Golf and you like it, or you think that it's but ugly. Can be. Depends on the eye of the beholder, right? So what does that mean for people who design for the web? Maybe it means you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder anyway, right? So why care? So, of course, there's another part in the saying, which is, of course, there are certain things that are in common. While you will always find someone who finds something very ugly or very beautiful, there is some kind of trend. And when we design for the web, we should try to focus on those trends to make sure that as many as possible like our designs. So if I show you these two websites, I would like you to ask which of those is more beautiful. So who thinks the blue one is more beautiful? Who thinks the green one is more beautiful? Oh, how did that happen? It's in the eye of the beholder. How can that be? Well, I'm sure all of you think both are ugly because you come from design and all designs are ugly except the ones you do. But you get my point, right? So there are certain things that lead to beauty or that lead to more people thinking that something is beautiful. And that leads us back to a very old discussion in the field of HCI. So HCI, human-computer interaction, you probably all know about that, developed from a very functionality-focused approach. So and there was a very old discussion that was called like form follows content. So like it's more important to have stuff usable, and the way it comes is really not so important. And that was like almost like a religious war. And like always with these kind of discussions, there are very extreme points of views which make no sense in the end. And this historical tension led then to different ways of handling this factor of aesthetics. So many people thought initially usability is key and aesthetics is like secondary. It's like not really important. And there were even people who said that these dimensions are orthogonal. So you have on the one side usability, and usability is objective, you can measure that, and usability means like everything works, it's task-oriented, you are very efficient, very effective when you do your stuff, that is good. And on the other side, there's like these aesthetics, and this is kind of like this feely stuff. It's kind of subjective. You can't measure that, and it's kind of, everybody has like different opinions about that, and so let's not care about that. Which, of course, is not a good way of handling something that is very important in everyday life. So that came to like, there are like famous testimonials, which I really enjoy always reading, One of them is from Nielsen, which I'm sure most of you know, who said, users don't care about design for its own sake, they just want to go get things done and get out. So that very clearly shows how he thinks about that. Or Spool, who said, no one serves the online employee policy manual just for the kicks. And he's probably right, but that doesn't mean that it's not important to have things look nice. And I think this is the best example, and it's still online. I just took that like a few weeks ago. Jacob Nielsen's website, useit.com, still looks like that. And I don't have to explain to you that this shows his attitude towards aesthetics, right? So that's like the historical tension of that, and this changed a lot in the last 10 years, luckily. And it was very interesting that, that the field of HCI had this attitude toward aesthetics because there were many psychologists working in there. And from psychology, we knew like since many decades that the factor of beauty is very important. So there's tons of research in that. And one old research from Diane and colleagues, titled, even with the title, What is Beautiful is Good, showed that attractive people, they are attributed with socially desirable attributes. So if someone is looking nice, you will think good of that person. If someone's looking ugly, then not, which is, of course, unfair, but that's the way people work. So there are many explanations for that, why this factor of beauty influences our behavior in that way. So one is stereotyping, so beautiful equals good, ugly equals bad, so you have automatically some stereotyping in you, and then you will treat the people differently, they will respond differently, and then you're in a feedback loop, and at the end, the good people is good, and the ugly are not. Or you can have another explanation, which would say halo effect. A halo effect means that beauty is a lot easier to detect than more personality features of people you interact with. So you see someone is beautiful, and that shines over and influences the way you evaluate them. Or the effect explanation would be that when you see someone and this person is beautiful, you're in a good mood, and because you're in a good mood, then that shines over to the interaction, and so on and so forth. You have here this picture of these, let me see, where do I have the pointer here? Oh, yeah. So this picture here, you see an interesting study where they took people, like not only women, also men, and had them like made beautiful with makeup. So this is the same person. It's just like professional makeup person helped, and used these pictures for a study, and could show that the nice-looking, the makeup people were attributed with much more socially desirable attributes. So that's the way we work. So that's just to have in mind, so we know from psychology that beauty matters, and the field of HCI had to painfully realize that at some point. And that all changed with a study that is quite old, like from year 2000 now, from Trzcinski and colleagues, where they looked at those factors. What they did, and I want to show this to you in detail so you understand what they do, because most people only know from that article the title, which is called What is Beautiful is Usable. Maybe you heard that one day. But it's important to know what they did to also be able to judge what that means. So they wanted to look at both factors, aesthetics and usability. And they decided to manipulate user interfaces of ATM machines, so cash machines, we all know. So what do? They had those two factors, aesthetics and usability, and they wanted to manipulate that and to let people use it and see what are the effects of these two factors. So on the one hand, we have aesthetics. How did they manipulate aesthetics? What they did 9 different versions of UIs, and they differed mainly in the placement of the buttons. So you have this UI here. It's in Hebrew, I think, because the authors work in Israel. So you have here the buttons, that's the way we know it, right? So that's this aesthetics high, and that is aesthetics low, where the buttons are like this. So they had 9 different UI versions, and they let people rate those before they interacted. They showed it to them, and then people had to say which are beautiful and medium and ugly. And then later on, they had to interact with one of them that they rated beautiful or medium or ugly. So I will talk later about that manipulation, but that was the way they did it. The other thing they did is to manipulate usability, and what they did basically is to have the system respond late. So you had, after a click, you had to wait 9 seconds until it responded, or you had to click buttons twice, or shortcuts were eliminated. So all kind of performance things where you were a lot slower getting your cache out. And what they then found is this here. This is like the key finding, where you see we have here beautiful ATM machines, medium and low, and we have here the high usability group and here the low usability group. And what you see is that when you are, or people that were in the high aesthetics group, they all rated the system very well. Didn't matter if they were in the high or the low usability group. So as soon as the interface was beautiful, their entire judgment system collapsed, and they liked it. Didn't matter if they had to wait 9 seconds for the system to respond. And that led then the authors to conclude what is beautiful is usable. So if you make something look nice, people will like it. Doesn't matter if it's crap. So I'm sure you're all professionals or work in that kind of field, and you might disagree with that, or I ask you, who disagrees with that statement? Who agrees with that? What is beautiful is usable. Make it beautiful and it works. Or you're all a bunch of non-opinionated people. How can that be? You're designers. Okay, so there are a bunch of problems with that study. One thing is the way they manipulated aesthetics. So first of all, I'm sure you all will agree that both UIs are butt ugly. So it's kind of difficult to say that this is like beautiful, because it's not. But let that aside, okay. I mean, they were working within this frame of different UIs, so one is maybe nicer than the other. The problem here is that they manipulated aesthetics by moving the buttons to another place. And this manipulates usability too, right? Because if you have to enter your code on this UI, it will take you longer. It will not be the way you're used to it, because this is the way you're used to it. So it will take you longer. You will have to adapt. You will not like it because you don't like if they change the stuff, you know, right? So change a version, all these kind of factors come in, and this influences usability, of course. That's not just aesthetics. So these factors were mixed, and actually in the paper, if you read it and you know a little bit about statistics, that is also clear. The manipulation effect, the manipulation check they did not perform well. Both factors were mixed. So that's very difficult then to take a conclusion out of that. The other problem is that usability here was manipulated only by performance. So the only thing they did is like it takes you longer, but usability is not that. Like there's a lot of other aspects to usability than only performance. So it's kind of a very reduced way of manipulating usability. But after this study, what happened is that many other authors started to look at these factors, which was very good. So it was a very valuable study. And there are two types of studies, which I will not show you here now, but just very quickly so you know, there are correlation studies and there are experimental studies. Correlation studies means that you look if those two factors, aesthetics and usability, if they correlate. And correlation is not causation. So that means stuff that is more beautiful is perceived more usable, but you can't say it's because of the beauty. It might be because of something else. It's just correlation. And it has been shown with many different products, not only the ATMN layouts, also websites, MP3 players, and so on. So there is a clear connection between these factors. That is very interesting. On the other hand, there are experimental studies. Experimental studies try to manipulate those factors and to look at what happens, the way like Traktinsky did it. And here the findings are like kind of not so clear. You see here, these are the effect sizes. I know most of you don't know about statistics, but I tell you like high is good, so high means a high effect. So you see here, these are very low, they're basically non-effects here. And the two ones that found effects found also effects for usability. So they found not only aesthetics influence the way we perceive usability, but also the way we perceive usability influences if we like a website's design or not. So that's very interesting. And that is like the moment where it got clear that it's maybe a little bit more complex than Kretinsky said. So what we then decided to do is, that was like a project that went on for years, is we needed to have a way to look at this and manipulate aesthetics and usability without, like separately, not like Kretinsky did it. And we finally managed to do this, and this study that was just published recently, where we looked at those factors, and I will show you how we did that. So what we first did is we had 10 pairs of website. So we took nicer layouts from an open source website where you can just download designs, and we made them ugly. Because like we're psychologists, we don't know how to make something nice, but it's very easy to make something look very ugly. So that's why we took like nice designs and make them ugly. And we had restrictions to do that. We said, we are not allowed to replace any element. We're not allowed to change the readability of any label. We are not allowed to change the labeling of any label. The only thing we're allowed to change is stuff that does not matter for usability. So that is basically background and useless, weird images that are here for nothing. All the other stuff, I'm sure you will agree, is the same. So this is ugly, this is nice. We had 20 pairs, we did a pre-study, we had people rate that, and this was the pair we selected for the main study. So you see here on a beauty scale from 1 to 7, people rate that with 1.3, and this here with 2.2, so people think that's ugly. And people think that's kind of beautiful, but 4.3 out of 7 is not like, wow, but it's okay, it's better. I mean, we're psychologists, we don't know how to make stuff nice. So this was how we manipulated usability and aesthetics. But now we needed also to manipulate usability, and that's a lot harder. And here, and that was why it took so long to do that project. We needed like 2 years to come up with a good idea. What we did is to manipulate the information architecture. So on a shop, you will have, this is like a shop, this is a clothing shop, you will have like main navigation here, so it's like ladies and men's and girls and boys clothing, right? And what we did is we changed the information architecture. So the upper one here is for the usable shop. So I want to pay a pair of girl sneakers. I'll click on girl, on shoes, on sneakers, and we'll find them. For the low usability website, we changed that. So here people had to click on streetwear must have shoes and girl sneakers, which of course is total crap. And nobody will know how to do that. But the advantage was that we could like lower usability without changing anything of the layout, only the labels of the information architecture. And there are ways to measure actually the quality of the information architecture. This is called Latent semantic analysis. I will spare you with the details, but also here, again, high is good, low is bad. You see here, this is the path leading to the right, to the searched, to the target, is 0.5, while the path leading to the target on the bad information architecture is only 0.2. So this is statistically significantly different, so people have problems finding the right stuff they are looking for in the low usability low group. So what we then had is like 4 shops. We had the beautiful with the high usability and the ugly with the low usability and vice versa. And we had people go through a flow where they first saw the design of the website and they rated that on different scales. Then they had to find 4 shopping items in the shop, And what we did is we didn't show them any labeling. We did not say girl sneaker. We just showed them the image. So because we didn't want to have any influence on how they make an interpretation of the information architecture. And then at the end, they could evaluate all that stuff again, and we would see how these different factors influenced the way they rated the shops. So here's the key results. Let's focus first on the left-hand side. We have here the interface usability group. We have high and low interface usability. And you see here, before they use it, they rate it on beauty the same. So it didn't matter if they were with a crappy information architecture or the good one, because they were not able to use it yet. So they gave the same ratings that worked. And then something happened, something very interesting. The ones on the high interface usability group, on the group that was fairly easy to find your stuff, they rated the same after the interaction. But if you're in the low interface usability group, in the one where you had to struggle with the information architecture, you suddenly think that shop is really ugly. It's very interesting because it's vice versa. It's not the thing Traktinsky found. It's like you get so angry that you say that shop is ugly because you suffered. You couldn't find the stuff you were finding, you were looking for. On the other hand, if you look at the aesthetics, interface aesthetics groups, then they are different at the beginning because people realize this is an ugly shop or this is a nice-looking shop, the way you did it with the first websites I showed you. And then they interact with it, and it doesn't matter in which group they are, they rate it pretty much the same afterwards. You may think, oh, it goes a little bit down, but that's statistically not significant. So they rated pretty much the same afterwards, after interacting with it. Didn't matter how nice it was looking. So that was very interesting. Suddenly, when we can differentiate those factors very clearly without influencing each other, then we find something like that. What does that mean? Oh, usability is very important and design doesn't matter. No, of course not. We looked more in depth into the data, and what we did, we measured effect. So we had people after each task tell us if they were calm, if they were happy, or if they were like angry. And if we factor that in, we find something very interesting. So here you have the objective usability. Objective usability means like how many clicks do they need, how long did they need, how many mistakes did they make. And you have here the perceived aesthetics and perceived usability ratings. So you see here clear connections between those. This is a path model. Again, you don't have to understand it, just believe me, there is a connection between those. The moment you factor the effect in it, you see that the connection between objective usability and perceived aesthetics, so how they are rated, disappears. So what does that mean? People get very angry with bad usability. And because they're angry, they rate the design worse because they hate that website. It's bad. Yeah, it made them waste time. And so it's not really that they perceive it as uglier, but if you are in a bad mood, you will give lower ratings because you're pissed off. So the conclusions is that, and I'm very happy about that, we don't lose our judgment capabilities just because an interface is beautiful. So we are like grown-up people that have quite stable judgment capabilities. But there is a relation between usability and aesthetics, of course. But it seems to be much more complex than just to say, oh, what is beautiful will be usable, or what is usable will be beautiful. It's a much more complex relation between those factors. So what we started then to do is to think, okay, how could we explain that? And we found a very old theory, the motivation hygiene theory from Herzberg, which was actually not done for UIs. It was more done in the field of working psychology, which says, okay, you got hygiene factors and you got motivational factors, and they work both in different stages. A hygiene factor are factors, they must be there so you feel well, so you have a good user experience. If they're not there, you can't have a good user experience, right? So in our case, that would be usability. If your website has to be usable before you can have a good user experience. There's no way you will have a good user experience if the usability is crap. But The hygiene factors, they're not enough to create a good user experience. You see that here, so they start to kick in, but then if you don't have the second factor, you will level out here and have like a somewhat neutral user experience. It will be okay, but you won't be very excited. The second factor, the motivational factors, is aesthetics. Aesthetics, you see, if it's here, if you're here, only it's only nice looking, but not usable, the user experience will not be good. But if both factors are here, they come to play together, and then you're really happy. Then you have a really good user experience. So usability would be the foundational stuff you need to have right, and then you can make it beautiful, and then you will have the best possible outcome, which is a website that is usable and beautiful. And that is, of course, the best possible experience. So that would be in such a, this is not experimental data, this is just a theoretical how it could look like. You would have pragmatic quality, which is usability, and you will have user experience here. And so you see if those factors, the hedonic quality, which would be this here, hedonic quality is like if it's beautiful or not. You will have here a bad user experience if both are low. You will have a somewhat better experience if usability is high. But the best possible outcome is here if you get both factors right. And that is the key message to take away, of course, and you knew that before. But that's what we do, we are scientists. We do like tons, like years of research to show you what you knew before. So thank you. I would like to close with a saying from Don Norman, which is one of the most brilliant guys in that field. He said, beauty and brains, pleasure and usability, they should go hand in hand. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Well. That's a good question. Because I work for Google only for 1.5 years. And before I was in academia where we don't implement anything. I would say, well, I know, for example, that the Kennedy redesign from Google was evaluated that way. And they did studies that I also looked into results where clearly they looked in different variations of the redesign and how they were perceived. And they went for the ones that were perceived as beautiful by the people. And of course, I mean, the factor of usability is constantly looked at with user studies and all these kind of things. But they didn't just design it and roll it out. It was very carefully evaluated in advance. But I didn't do it myself. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, okay. So the decisions were made by psychologists. Just So it's important to understand we did a pre-study with 20 different websites. So we had 20 different designs, and they were always paired with ugly and beautiful pairs. And we showed that, it's written here, like to 178 people, and they had to rate them. So for us, it was important to take the designs that had the largest difference in design, so we can measure something, and it's like a mean. So that means there are, of course, people that think this is beautiful. But we don't care about that as long as it's like just a few, because we do the study with more people and then we level that out, right? As for your thing about the eye and the psychedelic stuff, yes, there might be factors that lead like to different eye behavior, especially like you could measure that in eye tracking type studies. This was actually not the case here, and I was also not so afraid about that because people would be very focused on finding the right items. And we had all type of measurements, like how many, fixation points, because we did it with eye tracking and everything. So we had that all, and there was no difference between both designs as long as the usability factor was stable. So yeah, there might be something very, very small, a very small effect, but that didn't really affect the overall outcome. Other questions? Oh yeah, that's let me think. Well, useit.com could use one. Yeah, and I think, well, the more well-known one, they're all pretty good nowadays. I think they're probably more experts in the field in this room than me. I wouldn't know. Well, there are a couple of Google products that could use help. Yeah. Well, MySpace was ugly from the beginning. That was really, very ugly. I think it's not so ugly anymore, but nobody uses it anymore, so that's another problem. Yes? No, that study I conducted when I was still in academia. That was not done for YouTube. We don't have time to do this kind of beautiful research in YouTube. Yes, well, we look at the effects of design on behavior and on satisfaction. At Google, we are in the nice position to be able to do that with you guys. We just do different. We have just different versions online, and we measure how that affects the different key metrics we have. A/B experiments. We do these kind of things all the time. And you would be astonished how big of a difference you can measure sometimes with very small stuff, especially if you get so many users like YouTube. Other questions? Weekend. Okay, thank you.
As I said, please stay here for 5 minutes. We have to wait till the other ones are done, but they're also in QA right now, and then we do the short closing. We can watch some pictures while then.